how do you think that Constantinos Doxiadis shaped the urban planning of Baghdad, even though his plans wasn't constructed in his day? How do you think it changed Baghdad
That's right.
today?
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful question. So there have been a lot of scholars who have studied his plans because they are fascinating, and he had a very particular philosophy about how he thought people of different social classes should live together, what the relationship should be between people and car traffic, what should be pedestrian, what should be for cars, and where should there be green space. So for people who are interested in theories of urban planning, it's really rich. And so people have really looked at that. But you're right, actually a lot of his plans didn't actually get implemented. And for me then, I was less interested than in his theories and more interested in like, so what? Like what actually manifested for Baghdad? And I think there are urban historians who are going to be much more knowledgeable about some of this. So I'm also trying to be humble and like speak to what I can, knowing that, again, people love to research him. So there's a lot out there. But to me, the biggest impact that he had on the development of Baghdad was in his plans for what eventually became Medina Tawra, Revolution City, now Sadr City. And so, even though I make this point in the book that he actually wasn't the one to construct it, there's very strong indication that his plans for building that eastern part of the city on a grid was very influential in the actual shape and design of that part of the city. And when you look at a map of Baghdad, it's so striking because it's only Sadr City and like Jamila, right, who are on these grids, and no other part of the city is on a grid. So it really sticks out. And the other big part of the city that he has this impact on is actually on the Army Canal, because he helped plan and design it. He wanted it to be more of a lush green space. Like he really envisioned really nice gardens on both sides. And there is some of that today. But it had a very practical purpose for helping to control flooding in the city, which is very useful and important. But whenever you have a straight line in a city, it very quickly will have social and psychological significance, right? And so in the US, we have an expression to say, oh, someone was born on the wrong side of the tracks. And we mean the other side of the railroad tracks, because anytime you had a line, always one side would be a good and more desirable part, and another side would be sort of the bad part, the less desirable part. And the exact same thing
Got it.
happens with the
Yeah.
Army Canal, right? That you have sort of the good part of the city, the desirable part, which is the central part of Baghdad, and then the forced relocation of rural migrants on the east side of the canal on this grid. So his vision for that, his plans for that, which were commissioned by the Hashemites as a what they called slum clearance, absolutely has an impact. And then, the other thing I found is that he also had an early role in the idea that people of certain professions could live together or like should live together, or he helped design what that would look like. And so one of the plans that did actually get constructed was called Iskan, and it's a neighborhood in the western part of Baghdad, and it was built for pharmacists, right? So it was like, oh, in this neighborhood, this profession is going to live there. And it was for practical purposes, not like philosophical purposes or ideological. It was just, oh, we want to help attract these educated Iraqis to come to the capital, to work in the government, to help bring all the talent, right, to the center of the country. And then they started distributing land and housing to these professional organizations. And so all the pharmacists got houses here. But as I point out, then every government after them kind of kept the same pattern going. And so Baghdad is so fascinating in the way that it had, Hail Dhubat, and it had, Hail Jamia, and it has Hail Mukhabarat, and like all, all of these
Yeah.
professional neighborhoods that really shaped the character of the city. And I think especially in the 60s and 70s. I know today many of the original owners don't live there anymore. But there was a time when literally every single one of your neighbors would have the same job, which is just
Yeah.
like, what impact does that have on the society?